Greetings, all you ducklings out there. I'm Duuz-Diz-Din coming at you with another DuckTales 2017 episode review. This time it's Season 2's Episode 8, titled Treasure of the Found Lamp, which is actually just one big homage to the 1990s movie DuckTales, Treasure of the Lost Lamp. You know, this big theatrical production that they had put on. DuckTales had gained this great big following, and, I remember watching the VHS a good amount of times. I honestly probably watched that much more than the actual series as a whole. But it was a fun movie, a great time, and it to this day gets a lot of love and inclusion into various different DuckTales media. Now, as we open up the actual episode, we see a masked figure riding through the sands of Egypt to a nearby port, where he rides off the pier from the bike, plunging it into the water, and grapples onto the side of the ship. He then sneaks aboard, and the boat makes its way to Duckburg, where we can still see the destroyed bin off in the distance. Someone should really get on repairing that. But he then makes his way into McDuck Manor, where he encounters Huey, who rallies the family in order to greet their new guests. And, I was actually expecting a bit of a battle with this figure, who comes to be known as Jin. Now Jin is actually an allusion to a character from Treasure of the Lost Lamp, titled John. And he was a very scruffy, weaselly kleptomaniac in that series. Not very good representation of an Egyptian or Arabic person, I should say. But this version of Jin is very strong and commanding, filled with duty and purpose, and he recounts to Dewey, Webby, and Huey that his purpose here is to find the lamp, the genie's lamp. Because that is his mission. His family for centuries have been protecting and have been connected to this lamp, and because it is currently in Scrooge's possession, he has to find it before the Ifrit's dawn. Ifrit also referring to forms of genie, a demonic genies actually, an Ifrit, a fiery jinn. So, he says that if the lamp is not found before the Ifrit's dawn, there will be dire consequences. Now, Scrooge has to go rummaging through his garage looking for the lamp, but he can't seem to find it, with Miss Beakley chewing him out over the fact that he doesn't seem to really catalog or control where his items go. He doesn't really label anything. He labels the dangerous stuff, the really world-ending stuff. But in terms of that kind of, the little baubles he got on his adventures here and there, he doesn't really keep a good catalog of it. He doesn't even label any of the stuff, which is especially shown when Huey actually ends up dropping this specific lamp, which is, I think it was called the Ferryman's Lamp, which would actually lead to the world of the world of the land of the dead, basically. So, it's like, and when, Louis actually calls Scrooge out on this, the fact that he never truly seems to label any of his stuff. Scrooge just kind of brushes it aside, saying that he knows what these things are and what their significance are. That's the only thing that should matter. So that's going to play a big hand later down the line for the most part. But when Scrooge actually describes the lamp to Louis, we end up finding out that Louis had actually sold it in, of all things, a garage sale. And he has the misfortune of needing to relay this to Jin, who doesn't take kindly to the fact that Scrooge has lost the lamp. But Scrooge kind of basically lies to Jin, saying that the lamp was actually stolen. And, it's Webby goes on to just kind of run with the lie, ultimately saying that it was a Greek god who stole it, saying that they have to go to the Isle of the Gods that they went to in the previous season in order to find it. So Jin is all too happy to go on a great magical quest with Scrooge because I guess his family sees Scrooge as a great adventurer because it's never really pointed out why Scrooge was given the lamp, how he came upon it truly, and why Jin isn't more angry about Scrooge even having the lamp in general. That's the one thing I'm wondering about. But as Scrooge takes Webby on the journey in order to, basically keep Jin from destroying their house, just tearing it up looking for the lamp, it's up to Huey, Dewey, and Louie to try to retrace their steps and find out who the lamp was sold to. Webby is all too up for the challenge, ready to just, have her first, expansive quest just run through the gauntlet for the most part. But Scrooge is very determined to get that lamp back ASAP, so he tells Louis, find that lamp. So we come to find a flashback of Louis during his garage sale, where we see that yes, he was in charge of the sale, but ultimately he ended up passing it off to Duckworth because he kind of got bored with it after a little bit of time. It's the fact that Duckworth, it's interesting that he's a ghost, but it's also kind of interesting because he only seems to pop up every now and again. So they end up using the ferryman's lamp in order to summon the ferryman's flame, in order to summon Duckworth, in order to ask them what happened with the lamp. Meanwhile, Scrooge and Jin ultimately arrive at the Temple of the Gods in Ifrit, and they enter and they have a showdown with the Kraken, and we come to find out that Celine had kind of lended her services to Scrooge in order to keep Jin busy for the most part. Meanwhile, as the boys use the ferryman's flame in order to try to find Duckworth, they're encountered by this ghoulish creature who almost eats them before Duckworth actually pops out and tells them, yeah, no, not these kids. However, Duckworth is a little bit angry over the fact that they've interrupted his vacation. So it's interesting to see Duckworth just so easily switch between his demonic form, which you can see in the opening, but I constantly find myself wondering, why that form? Why the ram's horns and the skull and all that? Why is he even able to take on a form like that? But ultimately Duckworth says that he, recounts the events of the garage sale and says that ultimately he sold it to a guy who originally didn't have money, but then a crisp $20 bill flew right into his wallet. And immediately it's, everyone comes to the realization that it was Gladstone Gander. Meanwhile, Jin has ultimately defeated the Kraken and is ready to move on to the next stage, which Webby is kind of starting to run out of ideas because she thought it would take a little bit longer. Meanwhile, as they meet up with Gladstone Gander and, he recounts what had happened with him and the lamp, apparently a boy with sticky nickels wanted to buy it off of him. However, Gladstone wasn't down with the sticky money, so the boy traded him for his new home, which, as it turns out, is a blimp with a Gladiator symbol on it, a spoof of Goodyear. And when they try to figure out who could have possibly, been a boy who would buy this with a blimp, Gladstone says it was a boy who came out of a treehouse, and they realize that it was Doofus Drake who it was sold to. Meanwhile, Jin is told by Webby that his next task is to answer the riddle of the Minotaur. The riddle of the Minotaur, who is actually just a dressed up Scrooge and Celine. And when they ask the riddle for Jin, Jin easily figures it out. Like, he takes no time to figure this riddle out, which I'm taken off guard by because, even I was just like trying to think about it for a hot second. I'm just like, man, how did you figure that out so fast? But considering his job and his line of activities, it shouldn't be that surprising that he figured it out so easily. Meanwhile, at Doofus Drake's estate, Louis is none too happy to revisit the nightmares he suffered the last time he encountered Doofus Drake. And when they end up going in, Scrooge contacts them and says for them to hurry up as quickly as possible. There's not too much more they can do to stall Jin. And we find Doofus Drake, of all things, playing the theremin to his parents dancing, and it's the usual creepy affair with Doofus Drake. It's really weird the direction they chose to take with him in general, considering his previous incarnation, but it never fails to entertain. And when they end up asking Doofus Drake what he did with the lamp, apparently he used it as a gravy bowl of sorts to hold syrup for his pancake jamboree, he says. However, once it ran out of syrup, he threw it away, of all things, which is just like, why didn't you just refill it? And we come to find out he decided that it was more fun having his parents hold the syrup in their hands and pour it onto his pancakes, which it's just so weird. Why are you so weird? And unfortunately, the trash is emptied out at the Beagle's dump site. So it is now in the possession of Ma Beagle. And so once Celine tells him, it's just like she can only stall the door that Jin is standing at for so long. Scrooge is contacted about the fact that the lamp is now in possession of the Beagle's junkyard. So Scrooge gives a letter to Celine so that she can relay the message to Jin that the lamp was stolen, as she recalls it, by Ma Beagle. So Jin rallies Scrooge and Webby to go on the offensive and take down Ma Beagle and find the lamp, which they're just glad he bought at the end of it. So they sneak into the Beagle's junkyard and, observe things. They know they have to keep things quiet for the most part, do their best in order to sneak in under the cover of the darkness. But Jin, lets it known that it is imperative that they find this lamp, because should the Ifrit's dawn come about, it will be a catastrophe. The consequences will be catastrophic. I say words good. And Scrooge kind of freaks out because he didn't know it was that important, but Jin just goes in guns blazing. He's ready to get this lamp back, come hell or high water. So he ends up alerting all of the Beagles as well as Ma Beagle, and when he demands to have the genie's lamp returned to him, Ma Beagle immediately clues in that there's a genie's lamp somewhere in her junkyard. So she lays claim to it and sicks all of her Beagle boys upon Jin and the clan of Scrooge McDuck. Jin kind of gets clued into the fact that ultimately it was thrown away, as Ma Beagle had no knowledge of it being here previously. And when he questions why Scrooge would deceive him in such a way, Scrooge, just admits to the fact that he didn't know the significance of it. He had examined it and gone over the lamp, but there were no magical properties to it when he had seen it. And Jin's rebuttal rebuttal is just, did you examine it during the Ifrit's dawn? But apparently no, he didn't. So, Scrooge, as they fight off the Beagle Boys, tells Jin that he's sorry for not taking this mission seriously and trying to deceive him, but Jin, forgives him, ultimately feeling that the adventure alone is worthy for the tale of the lamp, as he's been inscribing this parchment as he fights these various creatures and foes to get to the lamp. But they end up spotting the lamp up top this kind of perch, this mound of junk. So they go in for it, but Jin ends up being tackled by one of the beagles. So in a scene very reminiscent of the original opening, where you see Scrooge and Glomgold going for the lamp, he ends up fighting over it with Ma Beagle, only for him to kick him away and claim the lamp. And as the Ifrit's dawn comes about, Ma Beagle rubs the lamp, only for nothing to come out. And Jin starts busting out laughing, just feeling that Ma Beagle was so silly to actually think there was an actual genie in the lamp. And Scrooge is taken aback because he's just like, but you said the consequences would be dire if we didn't get it back during the Ifrit's dawn. Only for Jin to explain that the Ifrit's dawn is actually just his birthday, and he wanted the lamp back because it had very great sentimental value to him specifically, because it was a great family heirloom. And he recounts them with the tale of the lamp, as the lamp did originally hold the spirit of a true genie, as his great grandmother had, discovered the lamp. However, instead of actually making a variety of wishes upon the lamp, she had actually found herself befriending and truly getting around with the spirit, along with the spirit of the lamp, to the point where they ended up falling in love. And the only wish that she ended up making on the lamp ended up being for the freedom of the genie within, and she took the genie as her husband, and from that day forward, he granted every wish that she could possibly ask for, not as a genie, but as a mortal. Which is also reminiscent to the Treasure of the Lost Lamp movie, as the genie from there, was actually wished by Scrooge to become a real boy, but this has a more sweeter undertone. Honestly, I would have loved that story to be involved here in more than just a flashback, but honestly, it's sweet enough as it is, and it's an interesting curve to this whole thing, so where we find out that Jin is actually the descendant of a true genie, and the lamp had actually been lost for many years, and Jin had wanted to reclaim it because he felt that, its significance was just because of the story behind it, and the relationship to his family, and the love of family that he felt for the lamp. Ma Beagle gets ready to destroy it, having no need for sentimental items. However, Jin reclaims it and, is just ready to throw down with the Beagles should they feel the need to continue to try to destroy the lamp. And as the family celebrates Jin's birthday with him, he ultimately convinces Scrooge, for the most part, by saying that the story behind the lamp is what gives it its true value in the long run. There's no reason to, keep something around and not have it really tell a story or have any real significance if you're not going to tell it to future generations from there on out. And because of that, Scrooge decides to open a specific wing of the Duckburg Museum filled with the various artifacts that he had in his garage, thereby being able to recount stories and tales of the various things that he found on his adventures and give some actual backstory to anyone willing to learn and listen. And our story ends out with Scrooge recounting his family about the various legends of the items he found on his adventures. Man, was that a fun episode, and it took an interesting turn for the most part, but it wasn't a bad turn. Anyone could go on this massive quest to find this lamp. That story has already been told in an hour-long movie. But, to have it told in this manner, where it's more of a sentimental feeling, the bonds of family and being brought together by various items and interesting tales and stories, that feels like what this version of DuckTales is all about, remembering the past for future generations. But hey, tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. How did you feel about this episode? Were you enjoying it for the most part, or would you have preferred an actual, dangerous Indiana Jones style trip to find a genie's lamp? Again, tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. If you liked this episode, feel free to leave me a like, and if you didn't, feel free to leave me a dislike and tell me what I did wrong in the comment section below. And how about subscribing and hitting the bell icon so you never miss out on another episode of my DuckTales reviews. And if you want to find me on social media, just Google Duuz-Diz-Din. I'm everywhere, for better or for worse. And until the next time, just remember that the past can always lead you to a brighter future. Bye-bye.